Welcome to a special edition of our first NBC Bank video update. Lenny, Vangilder, Ken Trahan. We switch spots here as we're talking high school football playoffs. As we say, Ken knows more about high school football than you know about anything. Ken, we are down to finals and semifinals weekend in this convoluted system that we have this year in Louisiana, where we will claim or proclaim 4 state champions on Friday, while 20 other schools are playing 10 games to earn their way into the Dome the following weekend. So hopefully you kept up with all of that. Let's start in the Dome, if you will, and work our way chronologically here. The 10 a.m. game, as I know you have been outspoken about the fact that there is a game going on at 10 o'clock on Friday morning to crown a state champion. It's not the best of circumstances, but they're going to play 4 games on Friday, allegedly going to start the last of those at 8:30. We'll see if that actually ends up being the case. But let's start with Division 4. And the seeds suggest that this is not the matchup that we would have expected, but, you know, that may not necessarily be the case.
No, in fact, I think these are the 2 best teams. You got a 5 and a 6, but on paper and based on schedules, I think these are the 2 best teams. As I've said all along, both of these teams by far played the toughest schedules in their classes, Southern Lab and Ouachita Christian. In the case of the Eagles, they've been there, done that. They're accustomed to being in the Dome. They're accustomed to playing for championships. Stephen Fitzhugh has a juggernaut of a program there. And even though they lost games in the regular season, they lost to traditional powers and higher classifications. Southern Lab played a brutal schedule of all teams of that ilk. So going into the playoffs, you knew that if they weren't beaten down and hadn't lost confidence, that they were going to be fine. And they certainly were. So this is the matchup I envision. And listen, here it is. So now you've got the one that's been there, done that, against the one that's trying to get there and do that for the first time since the 90s in Southern Lab.
Winner?
Well, I mean, that's a tough one. I mean, you know, when you look at athleticism, you got to like Southern Lab. When you look at program, you got to like Ouachita Christian. So it's tough. This is one of those I'd flip a coin. I'd go with Ouachita Christian based on experience.
Let me see if I have a coin that you can flip. No, actually, I'm gonna have to go. I have to go to the bank and go get one here. Let's move on to Division 3, the 1:30 game, and this is the 1-2 matchup here, and perhaps this is a little bit of what we expected, although I got to say I was very surprised with how Calvary Baptist handled Riverside in the semifinals. I thought that would be a much more competitive game than what it turned out to be.
Well, now you can appreciate Calvary Baptist. They beat West Monroe in a regular season. Gives you some sort of perspective on this school that's a 2A school as to what they can do playing in Division 3. Not to confuse everybody, but I'm doing so anyway. And they're great. And this game is the game that features 2 great quarterbacks, and Patterson and Pellerin. I mean, really terrific players. Pellerin, Ole Miss guy, from Catholic New Iberia. Patterson being recruited by everybody. Pellerin runs the wing tee, and of course, Calvary will spread it out. So 2 different styles, but go back to last year. The state championship game was played in the semifinals when Calvary Baptist beat Catholic New Iberia 34-33. We all know what happened the following week when Calvary played Archbishop Hannon in the Dome. So that was the championship game, played a week early last year. This year, they got the top 2 seeds, and they get there. So it's a fantastic matchup. And at this stage, Catholic New Iberia scoring over 50 points a game. They came down and scored 55 on Newman. But when you pick in this game, there's no way you can pick against the Cavaliers of Calvary Baptist. They are clearly, to me, the team to beat.
Yeah, I think defense, in a game like this with 2 great offenses, I think it might be the best defense, or perhaps that is Calvary. Moving on to Division 2, that will kick off at 5 o'clock. Battle of Baton Rouge, University Lab against Parkview Baptist. What you see here?
Well, teams that are very familiar with each other. So obviously there's familiarity, and anytime you have that and you have teams that have seen each other before, you never know how it's going to go the second time. But if you look at this on paper, look, Parkview Baptist is running their downhill option offense to real perfection at this point. They played a tough schedule this year, and what they did to St. Charles Catholic last week was very impressive. St. Charles, with their defense, as good as they are, couldn't stop them. On the other hand, University Lab is the undoubtable favorite in this game. They have an offense that is diverse. They can run it. They can throw it. They're really good up front on defense. They were there last year. I do think there's something to be said about that. But again, Parkview Baptist has been there, done that too. But this is a first-year coach for Parkview Baptist, and obviously there's something to be said there too. So I have to pick University in this game.
Yeah, regular season rematch. University Lab handled them pretty easily in the regular season in a Thursday night game back in early October. And finally, we get to the finale. Allegedly, again, an 8:30 kickoff. We'll see if that actually holds true. the Division I championship, the top seed John Curtis, the 6th seed Jesuit, and so many storylines in this one.
Yeah, and you can follow all the storylines at sportsnoah.com. Some really good features this week and a game preview as well. Everything you want regarding the game. This is a delicious matchup because you haven't seen it before, and this is something that you're looking forward to. Everybody anticipated John Curtis and Rummel before the season started, and everybody was looking forward to it, but a funny thing happened on the way to the Forum, right? And Jesuit whipped Rummel and deserved to be here in the process. And again, that was a rematch game, and anytime you have those, anything can happen. And Jesuit was the better team on that night, and here they are. John Curtis is John Curtis, and all the rumors of their demise were greatly exaggerated. Their defense is terrific. If they don't turn the ball over, they're hard to beat. They run the ball very, very well. Two outstanding running backs in Ben and Jones. The quarterback, Miles Washington, an outstanding runner as well. Jesuit is balanced on offense, and they're just consistently good up front on defense. They don't make mistakes. And the teams that can hurt them, and Rummel had many chances to hurt them, are the teams that can throw. Rummel hurt them some and had one call back that was, by the way, a terrible call and should never have happened in a game of that magnitude. Still wouldn't have changed the outcome, but would have been a lot closer. That said, I think you have to throw it some. Curtis doesn't throw it. That said, you can't pick against John Curtis. I mean, it's John Curtis. They've won 26 state championships. There's no way you can pick against them. And they have some inherent advantages, too. They had one extra day to prepare. They had a little bit of an easier game than Jesuit had. And this is not casting aspersions at all, but they had a lighter schedule. Because once they got into conference play or district play as it is, it wasn't nearly as tough overall in terms of dealing with the navigating the schedule as Jesuit had. And, of course, Jesuit had to play one extra game in the playoffs. So some inherent advantages here for Curtis certainly point me toward them in this game. I give Jesuit a real chance. If Jesuit plays the way they played against Rummel, they can win this game. But if you're asking me for a pick, I'll pick John Curtis.
I was asking you for a pick, and you made it. So, the other thing you meant Curtis, the bye in the first round of the playoffs, the bye late in the regular season. So they've had a couple of weeks of rest and opportunity. This is going to be the 14th week in a row that Jesuit is playing. Now, we've gone through everything that you will see in the Dome on Friday. There are still 10 semifinal games in the 5 classes. Let's do the whip-around version here. Let's start with 5A and a terrific matchup, I think, arguably the best of the 10, coming up in Destrehan on Friday night, West Monroe and Destrehan.
Yeah, I read my preview on the game. I call it the rubber match. In 1993, the West Monroe dynasty was born when they beat Destrehan 28-21 in the championship game in the Mercedes-Benz Superdome. And Rondell Mealy's team for Destrehan under Timmy Rebo, now the coach at Nicholls State, and Don Shaw's, and that thing was born that night because the previous week they beat St. Aug 34-33 in overtime in a game that I broadcast, and West Monroe's gone on to win 8 times. Destrehan undefeated. They have played great football on both sides. Their defense has been impregnable. West Monroe played fantastic defense last week, but I'll give the edge to the home team here in Destrehan. And then, of course, when you look at the other matchup, Acadiana-Zachary, Zachary, as I said from the beginning, was the dark horse to win this thing. And they remain that way. They're only lost to Bird by 3 points to start the year. They haven't lost since, and they're scoring at an alarming rate. Acadiana's Acadiana. It's the playoffs. And that's the Wrecking Rams. What do you expect? And Acadiana's at home. And if they don't turn the ball over, I'm going to go with the 15th seed to get to the Dome one more time, the Wrecking Rams.
They got in as a very high seed a couple of years back. Of course, there were some extenuating circumstances there. Perhaps they do it again. Move on to 4A, and another great matchup here in the New Orleans area. Warren Easton, the 5 seed, welcomes the number 1 seed Plaquemine to Pan American Stadium Friday night.
And it starts at 7, expected to end around 11. They both score a ton of points. They'll throw it all over the place. It's going to take a while. The Green Devils, under Paul DiStefano, have done a fantastic job. They've protected that number 1 seed. They've had tough competition, rallied to beat South Terrebonne last week. Had a tough one with 35 in the opening round. But Warren Easton is playing great. They went up to Benton and crushed them 55-7 last week. I don't see anybody stopping their offense. I like the Eagles.
And the other matchup, Franklinton has to make the trip up north to Monroe to face a very good Neville team in a 2-3 matchup.
Yeah, rematch of the 2009 state championship game. Terrence McGee got hurt in the first half of that game and had to play on one leg. Neville won at 31-15. And, of course, this Neville team has everything. They don't have any weaknesses. Cavante Turpin is a special player. Wait till you see him. And he's hard to contain, whether in the kicking game or from scrimmage. Franklinton with a great win over Landry Walker last week. They're big. Physically, I think they'll stand up to Neville. I think the speed factor and the overall defensive effort certainly tilt this toward Neville.
Okay, we'll see how that plays out. As we move on to Class 3A, I know Amite is at home, but let's start with the 1-5 matchup in the semifinals with Livonia and West Feliciana.
Well, Livonia rallied to beat Rayville. Rayville had them down the whole game last week. That was my upset special last week. And I thought I had it till the end, and Livonia pulled it out. Guy Mistretta's been in the Dome before. He's been there, done that as a coach, and he's got Livonia playing very well. West Feliciana, on the other hand, knocked out the team I picked to go to the Dome, Union Parish. Did they ever? They took the Farmers apart, 48-21. That was a statement game. So I'm going to stick with what I've been doing and picking against the 1 seed like I picked against Plaquemine before, too. I'll pick against Livonia and go with West Feliciana.
On the other side, Amite at home against a team you've been touting the entire playoffs in Northwest Webster.
What an unbelievable comeback by North Webster to beat Patterson last week, who was my pick to go to the Dome. They ruined it for me. So North Webster, Matt Sims Central, is very happy to be where they're at. And obviously Amite is Amite. The Warriors are playing great. And here's what gets my attention about Amite. Their defense is playing outstanding. Aside from the fact that they can score, their defense has been terrific. North Webster's really good on offense, but they don't play the kind of defense that Amite plays. I like the Warriors at home.
Class 2A, no one from South Louisiana, or Southeast Louisiana, I should say, remaining. Let's take a look at those two semifinal matchups.
Well, Manny's the chalk. I mean, they've been the best team all year long, and they've just totally dominated, But last week, St. James played them tough, lost by 2 touchdowns at home. They just couldn't overcome the talent that Manny has. Northeast is a good football team, but they're no match for Manny in my mind. Manny now the champion of splitting in every sport. Certainly the chalk in football at this point. They're going to win that game.
And on the other side?
Sterlington and Kinder. Kinder's, look, they were in the Dome last year. You saw what they're all about. Terrific program, and they're demolishing people in the playoffs. But I picked Sterlington to go to the Dome before it started, so I certainly can't change now. I got to go with the Panthers in this one based on their strength of schedule.
Sterlington hung up half 100 in the quarterfinals. Let's see what they can do this week in the semifinals. And finally in 1A, this is truly the chalk bracket, and we're not surprised at that at all. These are the 4 best teams, and they're still standing in the semis.
Yeah, Kenwood, first-year coach, getting there. Program obviously understands it, and they've got very good players. Mangum's too good, though. So I'm going with Mangum. And then, of course, on the other side, we've seen this one before. West St. John having to make the long trip north to Haynesville. Haynesville had a tough time last week. They had to score late to beat East Beauregard 14-0. West St. John took plain dealing apart in pretty good fashion. West St. John can score. They're going to have to score a lot. Field conditions matter. I'm seeing rain possibly in the forecast for that sector of the state, which concerns me. Kind of hard to pick against the Golden Tours at home.
You've got one upset that has happened seed-wise thus far in the Class 1A bracket thus far. And they're already getting you updates as we get ready for a Friday night of football. 14 games this Friday night. And you can keep up with them all, I know, on sportsnola.com with the All-State Sugar Bowl scoreboard. Of course, Ken Trahan's original prep football report will have within that broadcast the Division I championship game between John Curtis and Jesuit. It figures to be a fun, a unique, nothing like we've ever seen before Friday night of football, with championships going on in the Dome and semifinals going on in parts all across the state of Louisiana.
Yep, part of the original. Listen in on Friday night, 6:05 on WGSO 990 AM locally and around the state, and we'll have the Jesuit Curtis broadcast as part of the show, which will go on till, I don't know, maybe midnight or so, but it's all good. No problem.
Is there curfew?
I don't think so. It better not be.
That's a good thing. That's a good thing. That's our special edition of the first NBC Bank video update as we preview this upcoming weekend in the high school football playoffs. No better place to keep up with all of the action right here at sportsnola.com.